is my
I was going to say, if I could sing, I'd sing, but nobody wants to hear that.
Here's my heart, Lord. Here's my heart, Lord. Speak what is true. Here's I am loved, I'm made pure, I have life, I can breathe, I am healed.
spend a few moments in silence, bringing our hands to our hearts, breathing deeply into our hearts, our own personal prayers for this evening, prayers for ourselves, prayers for those we love, prayers for those we don't love, prayers for the whole east coast of our country, and people in the line of flames. Just remember that we're here to be instruments of peace, conduits of light, and responders with compassion and kindness to circumstances in our lives and in the general condition of the world. So we breathe deeply, and we come into this present moment, ready to share this evening together. Thank you all for being here. Those of you physically here, those of you out there. We continue having technical difficulties every week, and yet it's really the least of our concerns. The main thing is that we're together and that we're dedicated to having this sacred path, that we're walking this sacred path, that we're committed to the ways in which we can continue to walk in spite of obstacles and bumps and bruises, the bumpy road to enlightenment. We're taking that road and we're taking it together. You know, every week I've said this time and time again, every week I have a plan, and in the workbook, the section is moving into an essay that says, what is sin? And it looks at sin, the word sin, from A Course in Miracles perspective, is a mistake in need of correction. It's not a behavior in need of damnation or something that's going to be judged at some final point. In fact, the Course in Miracles says that the final judgment is the realization of who you really are. That you have this opportunity to be seen as the love and the light as God sees you. That the final judgment will just be a remembering of who you are. And so sin in A Course in Miracles isn't seen as the traditional religious concept. And so as I was thinking to talk about that, the reminders kept coming up that tomorrow is 9/11, the anniversary of, I guess, the 19th year, right, the 19th year. So I want to unpack it a little bit around spiritual principles. So I hope I don't trigger anybody or upset anybody, because it's really hard to think of something that was so devastating to each and every person in this country, and to try and look at it from a perspective other than attack and counterattack. So we are going to look at it from a Course in Miracles perspective. 9/11, of course, was a time when all of us sort of spent days just in a daze, right? We were in a daze. We were sort of, I remember going to the post office and feeling like I was in slow motion. It just felt like everything was just so shocking. And I think about how there's countries where people live like that all the time. You know, they're always living in the fear of being destroyed. You know, there's wars and takeovers of towns, and just recently there was a big destruction of an area. I guess it was was it Lebanon? I think it was. I don't know. Excuse me for not knowing exactly where it was, but it was just recently. And so anyway, that kept coming to me, the idea of looking at 9/11 in a from a non-upset perspective. So let's look at that. So the first thing I wanted to show you, hopefully it'll work this week. Last week the videos weren't working, so if it doesn't work, then I'll just have to explain it to you. But 2 weeks after 9/11, it was back in 2001, there was still an Oprah Winfrey show, not on OWN, but like regular, you know, when you came home from work, you go and check on and see who's on Oprah. And 2 weeks after 9/11, it was around September 25th, something like that, she had Marianne Williamson on. And so they were talking about how we process being attacked, being hurt, being damaged emotionally, physically, socially as a result of a terrorist attack. I want to say also that this is definitely grist for conversation, but I don't have a monitor today and my iPad's not working, so I don't know that I'll be able to interact with you if you have a question, but I will be overlooking everything that comes up when we're done, and then I'll do what I can to address it. So you might have to get your answers after the fact. So for now, I'm going to see if I can play this clip. And what it was after the show, they continued rolling, and some people in the audience started asking questions. So keep in mind, this is 2 weeks after 9/11, after the actual, we were still doing recovery work and, cleaning the grounds and still trying to find people. So it was still in the depths of everyone's despair around it. And so this conversation took place. And so I'm going to see if I can show it to you. And it's only 3 minutes. So let's see if we can get it to go. Oprah. Is it coming up? Let's see if Oprah's coming up. Winfrey.
For a book, working together,
Yes.
to love and marriage.
Do you disagree?
You're right.
Whatever you're into,
HGTV television.
from the
Commercial.
Discovery family of networks.
All right, here we go.
And I asked the question last week when everybody was saying when the polls were 81% of the people wanted war, and I asked the question in the audience, does that mean you're willing to give up your son? Does it mean you're willing to give up your son? Because I think we all think war means they're going to get hurt, but they're not going to do anything to us. So it's worth thinking about.
I feel like this is a chess game, and we're tempted to respond by playing football.
Right.
It's like a chess game with an evil chess master. You have to think about it for a long time, be very careful with your moves. A kind of football mentality, let's just go, 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 and do something can actually increase the danger and threaten our security even more. So it's a state of our being here that is every bit as important as what we do, is what we're thinking and who we're being.
But what about justice? I mean, they should pay for the crime that's committed.
I think the issue here is does an act of vengeance at this point protect us and our children the most? I think that's the question people have. I think we must be lawful and moral and thoughtful. Lawful in the sense of behaving within international law, and moral in the sense of asking ourselves if we want a lot more innocent people to die, because these innocent people died. You know, Gandhi said 2 wrongs make an eye for an eye long enough and everyone goes blind. So I'm glad to see the government exercising some restraint. So we need to be thoughtful about this. It's not as simple as go get them. Who are you going to go get? They're a movement. It's not an operable tumor the way Hitler was. It's like delicate surgery, and military is a blunt instrument. And it's got to be very, very delicate, like laser surgery, not some big scalpel.
Yes, ma'am.
I think that we have to just take
Start
better
being
care
simple.
of each other. We have to take better care of each other and be kinder to each other.
Yeah.
To be kind costs nothing. To succumb to that hate and fear that you talked about could cost us everything.
Right.
So each of us can do something.
Hey, you-
To be kind costs nothing.
To be kind costs nothing. What does that say? So what I wanted to point out there was that the initial conversation was we need to do something about this. We need to have vengeance. That was 2 weeks before the United States entered into Afghanistan. On October 7th, the United States entered into Afghanistan and invaded Afghanistan. So since then, in 2018, the statistics say that over 2,000 U.S. soldiers were killed, over 20,000 soldiers were critically wounded, and then if you add in the NATO coalition of other countries that were helping, you have 3,500 people that were killed, soldiers, over 40,000 that were wounded, and that doesn't include citizens, and it doesn't include the Afghani people or their statistics of soldiers who were on our side. So the point is that A Course in Miracles is always warning us against attack mentality. And you can see that because we were still only 2 weeks into it, there was still a lot of, we've got to do something about it. And I love what Oprah said, do you want to give up your son? Do you want to send your son there? Well, our country decided that yes, we are going to do that. And so here we are, remembering 9/11, yes, but also we have to remember that what we did as a result of 9/11 was not the answer. It has never been the answer. Since the beginning of time, it has not been the answer to invade and kill and try to go the eye for an eye. And yet, it is only a few people throughout history who have thought differently. And so now we are a new generation of new thinkers and hopefully thinking enough about the fact that we have to change our consciousness around attack. Was it the right thing? I'm not even going to get into a political discussion about that. I just want to look at it from a spiritual perspective. Attack is not the right answer to attack. Counterattack. It was not the answer. We didn't see that much has changed. Just a lot of lives lost. And so A Course in Miracles will remind us that this is a very deeply rooted consciousness. It's been since the beginning of time, and it's our turn and our time to try to change consciousness, and we start with ourselves. And it would even go on to say that murder is not something that occurs out there, because sometimes, I mean, there's times when you just feel so mad. Doesn't mean that you're capable of murder, but it means that this is still in us. Anger is still in us. Reactivity is still in us. And so on a small seed of an opportunity to look at our own selves, we can see whether or not we're willing to change the way we think about things that happen on the outside, even if it's an attack. It's not to begrudge anybody who's suffered as a result of 9/11. The fact is that 9/11 occurred because we have always had this war mentality. This just happened to be our turn to get hit. You know, it's a sad reality of what occurred in our country because we were all so shocked about it. So in October, we invaded the country. In November, I wrote an article. I was writing for a local magazine at the time. My column was called Embracing Spirit. And I wrote an article called The World is in the Mirror. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. I just wanted to, what I was talking about in the article was just about how when I went into ministry, I was realizing how much I had to confront so many of these things, confront my own reactivity, confront my own ideas about how way things should be, how I want them to be. And that I had to look at how many areas of my life I was not correct. I had to be willing to change my thinking. I had to be willing to see myself with rigorous honesty. And so, yes. Oh, we have a comment? Sure.
Gary Allen says,
Hi, Gary.
I remember that we began to ask the question, what did we do that caused them to hate us so much? Then we were told to go shopping.
So Gary asked that we were asking ourselves, what did we do
To make them
hate us so much? And there's been a lot of theories around why people outside of this country hate us. I mean, it doesn't make it right. And I don't know the part about the shopping, but I do know that there has been opportunity for self-reflection. There was a lot of opportunity for self-reflection. I thought it was interesting. Somebody was doing like an on-the-street interviews recently, and they were talking about, if Joe Biden wins, and then if he passes away before the next election, and Kamala Harris would be our president, and are we ready for a female president? And this one, it was actually a woman who was saying, no, women are too emotional. We just go to war. And the guy said, well, hasn't every single war we've ever been in been started by men? So it's just, we just have these twisted ideas about what's right and what's wrong. And, the idea is that we have to self-reflect. We have to look at ourselves. Why would somebody want to eradicate our country, the American way, you know, that could be another discussion, but we really want to look at this from the Course in Miracles. But Gary, I'm glad you're here. It's good to see you or hear that you're on the line. Lisa is now monitoring for me because I wasn't able to get my iPad working. But what I was saying about myself in this article is that I was wrong about thinking that my own individual ego was real and important. I was wrong to think that I am separate from others simply because my physical body is different and apart. The concept of one mind, one love, and one consciousness was and continues to be an evolution of learning and understanding. So if we are all willing to have that evolution of learning and understanding within ourselves, and maybe as we influence others, it will be more of a global movement. And I think there are more and more people who are looking at not just what's going on with me individually, but what's happening globally, and how can I be a part of the change in the global consciousness. And that's why we're doing spiritual work. That's why there's those of us who really want to change deeply within ourselves. And there might be areas in our life where we're not so happy with ourselves because we know that that's an area that continues to need work. And so we look at it honestly and we do the work to make the changes that are necessary. Then I went on to say that my prideful ways met their semi-destruction. You know, I said semi-destruction because, you know, still got a little ego left. With a lot of noise, pain, resistance, and selfish negotiation. And it turns out that there's no negotiating with divine truth. On the path to living a life concentrated in peace and love, you have to look at all that is not loving and all that is not peaceful within yourself. And sometimes it's not a pretty picture. So as I was writing this article, and I had the news on, and lo and behold, there was one of those, maybe you remember this, that after 9/11 they would send, Osama bin Laden would send recorded like VHS messages, and there was one, I was like just looking at him, we're like face to face in the, you know, me and the TV and him, and I said, as I write this, Osama bin Laden is making statements of war against the United States. He is saying that we Americans have declared war on Islam and that we are sinners. As he speaks, I watch him and try not to focus on the holy war that seems to be brewing within me. And I say, child of God, to his videotaped eyes, how very difficult you're making my commitment to see all people as children of God and as parts of my own self, as elements of my own consciousness and as my brother. And yet, I still had to say, Osama bin Laden, you are a child of God. And I pray for the correction of your mind and heart. It's difficult. It's difficult when we're challenged by hate. So we're flooded with fears and grief and questions unanswered. Beneath our feet, the ground shakes. Deep within, our heart shakes. And where do we look for solace? Where do we find rationale? By looking into a mirror and seeing that we are one. We are the terrorists and we are the peacemaker. And we pray for the images to be united in the peacemaker. Because we are all of that. Thich Nhat Hanh had a wonderful poem called Call Me By My Real Name, and it was all about how I am all aspects of everything that is happening. Every part of me is in everything else and everyone else. And so we're trying to unify within ourselves the image of the peacemaker so that we can then become the peacemaker, that we can become those instruments of peace. Was there something else? Was there something else, Lisa? No, not yet. So it just so happens that chapter 23 in the text has a section called Above the Battleground, and it talks about the inner war, which by the way, when the true Muslims who are following Islam talk about the holy war, they're talking about the war within themselves. The fundamentalists who distorted that talk about the holy war as the right to kill others who don't believe as they believe. But you know, I think we did that too. Mm-hmm. Ever hear the crusade? This crusade to the Inquisition. Right. So chapter 23, section 4, if you're trying to follow along. Who are these people? A bunch of Oprah. That's Oprah's people.
It's your audience.
It's my audience. Thank you for being here tonight. Okay, so let's see. So we're going to go to chapter 23, section 4, and then we're going to start with paragraph 6. So I'm going to read that. It says, when the temptation to attack rises to make your mind darkened and murderous, remember you can see the battle from above. What does that mean? To rise above whatever is going on within you, to rise above it, so that you can do what the Course frequently asks us to do, which is to be hyper vigilant of our own minds. Pay attention to what's going on in our own minds. So it's like that Buddhist concept of being a witness to your thoughts. So it says, even in form, you do not recognize the signs you know. There is a stab of pain, a twinge of guilt, and above all, a loss of peace. This you know well. When these things occur, leave not your place on high, but quickly choose a miracle instead of murder. So it says murder, it's a little dramatic. Kind of like Ernesto when people knock on the door. He gets very dramatic. But, you know, it makes a point. I don't know if you can see him. He's right there. It's the point is that we sometimes just let our mind go into the counterattack thoughts, the upset thoughts, the hateful thoughts, the thoughts that we are being asked to restrain, to contain, to not allow it to take us to this place of vengeance mindedness. It says, God himself and all the lights of heaven will gently lean to you and hold you up, for you have chosen to remain where he would have you be. And no illusion can attack the peace of God or his child. So it's saying that once we really do the work, and this is a discipline, that's why it's called practice, spiritual practice, right? It's the discipline to keep ourselves at that higher level, looking down at the battlefield. And that, you know, we're not just talking about a battlefield like out in Afghanistan, we're talking about the battle within ourselves. Like, this is the discipline that we can look at ourselves, look at where our minds are, and choose a different way. Ask the Holy Spirit, how can I see this differently? And choose a different way of seeing it. And if you can't, you know, you might say, well, that's still the reality, that's still happening. Look, there's the destruction, there's all this stuff. And it's not about the fact that certain things aren't actually happening in the world of form. It's that you don't interact with it as a conduit of hate. You don't interact with it as a conduit of counterattack. You're changing the way you yourself interact with the world. Then it says, see no one from the battleground, for there you look on him from nowhere. You have no reference point from where to look. So in other words, if I'm just looking at you as the person I want to fight, how am I going to see you differently? If we're arguing and all I want to do is make sure you get my point, you hear me, you agree with me, I am not seeing you as a child of God. I am seeing you as an adversary. I'm seeing you as someone that I need to struggle with. Did you want to say something, Lisa?
You know, my lips are moving probably because I'm thinking. I didn't want to say anything, I'm just thinking.
Okay. Well, when the words are ready to come out of your lips, you let me know. I see the wheels turning. Yes.
That's making me nervous.
Oh, okay. Commercial interruption. We have something that might
Oh, off of there.
better.
Thank you.
Okay.
Things are so
I'm
good.
here to serve. So, okay. Let's go to paragraph 8. Think what is giving those who share their Father's purpose, God's purpose, and who know that it is theirs. They want for nothing. So this is really been my challenge this year, and I think a lot of people's challenge, because we've had so many challenges, because this is the year of 2020, the year of coronavirus, and for me, cyberbullying, and for some people, death in the family, and you know, just so many things that have occurred, and it's like, you don't even want to ask what's next, because you might find out, and it's just one thing after another. And you know, it's interesting, because the year is called 2020, and I just feel like it's all opportunities to open our inner eye to really see what matters in terms of our spiritual growth, in terms of who we can be as a result of all of this, to not be bitter, You know, I always talk about that crossroad that you can take, and you can be bitter, you can be better. And hopefully we're all going to come out of this better. And that when we do go back into, you know, whatever normal life is, that we can see ourselves differently, and that we can see other people differently, and that we don't get into the tango of the battlefield. The battlefield is wherever we choose to place ourselves in an adversarial position. So we're still on paragraph 8. It says, perhaps you think the battlefield can offer you something that you can win. Can it be anything that offers you a perfect calmness and a sense of love so deep and quiet that no touch of doubt can ever mar your certainty? That's what would last forever. Those with the strength of God and their awareness could never think of battle. What could they gain but lose their perfect vision? So here is our continued goal within our own individual spiritual journeys, to try and get to that place where we don't engage. And you think about, you know, people like Gandhi. You know, he saw the man approach him that was going to kill him. There was a lot of witnesses there. He saw the man coming toward him, gun drawn. And what did he say? Do you know? This was on your, no, it was not on the test. He said, Ram.
Oh,
He said,
that's right.
He said, Ram. He knew he was good. He didn't say, stop that man. He didn't say, when I go down, be sure to kill him. He said, Ram, because he knew it was too late. He knew he was going to die. So he wanted the last words on his lips to be a call out to God. He said, Ram. And, you know, we've heard stories of the crucifixion of Jesus, who had 7 words in 6 hours, 7 sentences, and asked for the people who heard him to be forgiven. So why is that? Why is it that these amazing teachers left us with that? Because they wanted us to live that. Imagine if we did. Imagine if we always did. If everyone lived this dedication to a way of consciousness that does not allow for attack. There would not have been any wars. We wouldn't have had continuous war, destruction. I mean, what happens during a time of war is heinous. Is that the right word? Heinous? It's
the right word.
Yeah, and it's beyond humanity many times, and it's because people get caught up. Get caught up in. It's almost like being at a football game. You know, I think I've been to one football game once, ever, but I see and I hear about how people get worked up into a frenzy for their team, right?
Especially Miami.
Especially Miami?
Fans, football fans, yeah.
And what is that frenzy? What is that? That frenzy is a place that your mind goes to, and you're joining in with all these other people who are in a frenzy with you, and now you're mad at the other team on the other side of the bleachers. You know, you don't even know those people, but you're mad at them because they're cheering for another team. And it's like this frenzied mentality. Well, the same thing happens in war, you know, that you have people who have decided that they're going to do what they're told, and they think they're doing the right thing. And, you know, we say thank you for serving your country, you know, on the one hand, and on the other hand, we say, did we have to go to war? Did we have to go to war? If we had changed our consciousness at a time when it was right to do so, which is anytime we've had a great teacher, anytime we've had a great teacher of peace. After Gandhi died, chaos broke loose in India for a while, you know? And it's because, and it's because the goodness of the light of God is not inaccessible. It's just that we don't see it within ourselves and we don't see it in others, and so we continue this push and this pull and these adversarial relationships. And so in the extended edition, the Circle of Atonement edition of A Course in Miracles that came out in 2017, there is a section called Cameos. And those cameos are not in any other edition of A Course in Miracles. And what they are is, Robert Perry and the Circle of Atonement, is they took notes from Helen's original notes and they saw things that she had left out because she thought of them as personal conversations between her and Jesus. So they made these cameos that you can sort of peek in on those conversations, and they're very interesting. So there's one called The Blue-Gray Bird, and the blue-gray bird is a dream that Helen had. And when you have that particular edition of A Course in Miracles, they make a reference to that dream, and the part on the battlefield, which is in the blue book, doesn't come till later, like many paragraphs later, but you would have to have that book to know what I mean. But anyway, so Helen had this dream about this blue-gray bird, and it was a bird that was flying around during the Civil War. And it was like watching everything that was going on. And the reason it's called the blue-gray bird is because the Civil War was also called the War of the Blues and the Grays, because the North wore blue and the South wore gray. It was like brother against brother, right? It's these people in the country having a civil war. So in her dream, this bird does, because it's blue and it's gray, depending on how the light hits it, kind of like Hazel Eyes, right? And so it didn't quite know what to do, so it went up in a tree that was in the middle of the battlefield. Kind of like, I could be on this side, I could be just right in the middle. So it went up on top of this tree, and it was just sort of observing what was going on, and it was listening to all the war sounds and the destruction. And when she woke up, Helen was very concerned about her dream. She didn't understand what it was, but she also realized she was in the middle of transcribing this particular part of the channeling that became chapter 23. So the interpretation of that dream is that we are like that bird, right? We can be on the battlefield, we can make the decision to take a side and fight it out, or we can rise above it. So we can think of ourselves as that bird that makes the decision to rise above it. And you sort of look at life, and it's not just battles. I mean, it's just all of life. It even could be a good thing, but to be able to look at life from an understanding that this is just a snapshot of our total reality. This is just a moment in time. This doesn't define all of who we are, what we are. The truth of who we are is beyond this. And so everything can be looked at from a perspective of, oh, well, isn't that interesting? Just looking at it. I'm reminded of a story from years ago. I used to go to a Course in Miracles class with Silmar Sanchez and some other people you might know, Bev Spivey. I think today's Bev's birthday, right? I heard that. Hello to anybody who can send my regards to Bev Spivey. So we were in a class together, and we were talking about how to look at things without attachment. And so Bev said, well, what if I'm in the park and it's a beautiful day, and the birds, it's a beautiful breeze and the birds are singing. Why can't I just say it's a beautiful day? Like, what's wrong with making that is that a judgment statement? And it's, if whatever you're enjoying, if you're enjoying it, that's for you in that moment to enjoy. But it doesn't mean it's the absolute truth, right? Because there's some people who might be agoraphobic and they can't go out to the park. There might be people who are afraid of birds, and if they're sitting in the park and the birds start chirping, they might get scared. So whatever we're enjoying in the moment is for us, it's for our own person, but it doesn't mean it's an absolute truth. It doesn't mean we have the right to decide that this is the right thing for everybody. And that's the way we have to look at everything in the world, in our world, in our circumstances. To try and look at it as like, oh, I'm enjoying my happy dream. Last weekend I went for the long weekend. I hope you all had a good Labor Day weekend. I went to Cocoa Beach, the city of Cocoa actually. And I was riding my bike down by a river, and I was just so happy, and I was singing, and I was just saying, oh my God, I'm so peaceful, this is so beautiful. And then I was taking a video, yes, while I was riding my bike, I was taking a video, and I was like giving like a little travelogue of my happiness. And, there was nothing that was going to take away that happiness. I was truly at peace and joyful. But that doesn't mean that, bike riding down to a river is for everybody. It's just whatever's right for you. It's the happy dream. A Course in Miracles tells you to enjoy it. Enjoy your dream. Enjoy the happiness. But just understand that that is not 100% of what you're here for, is to be looking at what is good, what is bad, what is joyful, what is not. For yourself, yes, as you walk through the world, but not for anybody else. Not to make that decision for anybody else. Have you ever been with somebody who decided that something is good for you? Yeah, everybody is like, yeah, you know, brothers and sisters. A lot of that happens. Some people tell you what is good for you. It's kind of like saying, you know, I have this bowl of jelly beans, and you can pick out whatever flavor you want. Those Jelly Bellies, they have their, and you know, you pick out all the coconut ones, and I say, what's wrong with you? The peanut ones are better. The ones that, you know, we can't decide what's right for others. We can't decide that what makes you happy has to make somebody else happy. So that's why it's a practice to take this aerial view of whatever's going on. So whether it's the battleground or whether it's the happy dream and you're having fun, it's a matter of recognizing that you can just be in awe of the idea that you are in this place, in this time, having this opportunity, and let Spirit guide you. Let Spirit decide what's the next step. Where do you go from here? What do you do? What do you say? Who do you say it to? It's a matter of just being open to really recognizing the truth of who you are, the truth of everyone else's. And if we were all peaceful, then we wouldn't be trying to impose our opinions on others, and we wouldn't want to feel the need to attack anyone for not thinking as we do or not doing what it is we would want them to do. See? Oh yeah, so I didn't say it was easy. I just said, wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice? You know, it would be really nice if we had what's that called? The peak, you know, where you get the most people who actually follow a spiritual path. It doesn't have to be A Course in Miracles, but a spiritual path that leads them to this place of nonviolence and loving consciousness and being instruments of peace. And then we have this critical mass, you know, like the 100th monkey or the 1000th monkey, where all of a sudden that's just a way of life. You know, we're all living in Pleasantville. You know, it would just be a dream, you know, just a dream of having that level of peace. And what the Course is telling us is that we actually can have that level of peace within ourselves. Even if it's not the majority, even if it's not, that nobody else can take that from you. That's what it said in here. If you live that way, if you truly believe that way, then when you do find yourself in an adversarial position, it doesn't mean that you have to lose your peace. You can still look at it from above, from a higher perspective. I'm so curious about those wheels that are turning. I can see them. So I wanted to share with you, I thought it was interesting, the lesson that will be for tomorrow, which is 9/11, lesson 254. It says, let every voice but God's be still in me. And the prayer says, Father, today I would but hear your voice. In deepest silence I would come to you to hear your voice and to receive your word. I have no prayer but this. I come to you to ask you for the truth. And truth is your will, which I would share with you today. Today, we let no ego thoughts direct our words or actions. When such thoughts occur, we quietly step back and look at them, and then we let them go. We do not want what they would bring with them. We do not want what they would bring with them. We do not want to hang on to thoughts of anger and upset and despair and retaliation and revenge. We do not want what they would bring with them. What would they bring with them? More feelings of anger, more feelings of upset. You're just feeding the angry dog. You know the story. Which dog is stronger, the one you feed, the peaceful one or the upset one? And so we do not choose to keep them. They are silent. And in the stillness, hallowed by his love, God speaks to us and tells us of our will. What's our will? Our will is to be at peace. And we would then choose to remember him. The idea is that God's will for us is perfect happiness, to be at peace. And he or she is giving us the tools to find that peace. And those tools are forgiveness, compassion, self-discipline, the self-discipline to remove ourselves from that reactivity, to not be in the mindset of attack and counterattack. How's our time?
7:47.
Okay, 7:47. So I had this, so while I was doing my deep research in the nature of humanity by way of TikTok videos, I came across this love affair between a cow and a chicken. And so I'm going to show you the picture. And I thought, wow, I mean, wouldn't it be nice if we could just live like animals? And you know, you think living like an animal is a bad thing. So here we have, I don't know if you can see that, but here we have a beautiful cow and a beautiful chicken, and the chicken is in between the cow's little hoofy things, and the cow's head is on its little body. And from what I understand, there was no eating of the chicken after the camera went off. So it's like that, the idea that, you know, the lion and the lamb, the lion laying with the lamb, that if we can really allow that to be a part of our lives, and hopefully that extends out until there comes a time when there is no war. I would love, before I leave this physical form, to see complete and total peace. I came across this guy that you might be familiar with. I just heard of him just the other day. His name is Ian Thomas. He's sort of a young contemporary South African poet. And he said, every day the world will drag you by the hand and yell, this is important, this is so important, this is important, you need to worry about this, and this, and this, and this. And each day, it's up to us to yank our hands back, to put it on our hearts and say, no, this is what's important. This is what's important. I think that sums up A Course in Miracles right there. It just sums it up, because this really is what's important. What we're doing with our hearts, what we're doing with our minds, to bring our hearts into a place of balance and send that love, bring our consciousness to love. That's the first step, right, in Course in Miracles, to change our minds to a consciousness of love, to bring that love to our hearts, and then to send it out into the world. And so because of that, I wanted to play our last song tonight. I played it before, and it started circulating on Facebook again, and I was like, oh, well, I think I'll play it again. And it's One Day. It's the song One Day that was originally done by some guy whose name starts with an M, and I don't want to mess it up. But then there's this other guy who brought people together, and I thought it was especially important to watch it tonight because he brought together people who were Jewish and people who were Muslim together to sing, and it's really very beautiful. So, provided I can get the video up. So far, we have not had too much technical difficulty, so let's see if this will happen. And thanks to Pam Robb for reminding me of this one. She brought it back. She sent it to me, and you might find it familiar because we've seen it before. Just to see if it comes back up. If not, for those of you who are on my text list, not to worry, you know you're going to get it tomorrow in the text. If you're not on my text list and you'd like to be, you just need to let me know. I send a text out every day. I guess you're just going to listen. So one day we'll have a technical support team that will make sure that everything goes well. Whatever happened to Rusty? Where are you, Rusty?
He's in love, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, one day, it's a beautiful video. I'll put it on the Miracles with a Twist tonight so you can see it. It's in Hebrew and it's in Arabic, and the people had just a couple hours to learn it, and they came together in this huge auditorium and they sang it together. It was really very beautiful. So thank you all for being here tonight. I'd like to end with this. I choose to spend this day in perfect peace. It does not seem to me that I can choose to have but peace today, and yet God assures me that we are all like him. Let me then this day have faith in God who says that I am his child, and let the peace I choose be mine to bear witness to the truth of what he says. God's child can have no care and must remain forever in the peace of heaven. In his name, I give today, this day, to finding what my Father wills for me, to accept it as mine, and to give it all to his children along with me. Amen to that. Amen to that. Let's just love one another. And one day, we're going to see peace. Thank you. God bless you. If you choose to help with the financial life of this ministry, thank you. You can find a link on the page. Just scroll down a little bit on the page that invites you to these gatherings, these sacred gatherings, every Thursday, 7 o'clock, archived after the classes, after the gathering is over, and again also on my YouTube channel, which is Rev Lori Cardona. And you go to the playlist for Miracles with a Twist. Please subscribe, and God bless you. See you next week.